It feels like every single year, technology creeps a little closer to the center of our lives. There's a smartphone glued to everyone's hand, an AI companion we ask questions daily, a social media feed where we archive our entire existence. It makes you wonder, how much more integrated can we possibly get? Well, that's where BCIs come in. Brain-computer interfaces, or BCIs, are systems that establish a direct communication pathway between our brain and an external device. Instead of relying on traditional neuromuscular outputs, like speaking or moving one's hand, a BCI can record the brain signals and decode them into digital commands. Suddenly, you're controlling a computer mouse, operating a prosthetic limb, or typing a message on screen purely by thinking about it. There's plenty of excitement for this technology, yet beneath the technological optimism, there's also some anxiety and fear. We're currently living through a period intensely focused on bodily autonomy, defining who commands our physical selves. Introducing a technology that could compromise that boundary, operating from within the mind itself, challenges our very understanding of self-governance. So how do we brace ourselves for this? How do we anticipate the relationship between us and our own bodies in an age where the boundary between the mind and machine is starting to blur? I think to discuss this question, it is important to first examine the most prominent BCI in 2026, Neuralink. Founded in 2016 by Elon Musk and a team of scientists, the company's objective wasn't necessarily to reinvent the fundamental mechanisms of BCIs, but to scale their power. In a 2019 scientific paper, Musk described the project as a push toward a flexible, scalable brain-machine interface that increases channel count by an order of magnitude over prior work. In that same paper, Musk also discusses the goals of his device. As he says, although significant technological challenges must be addressed before a high-bandwidth device is suitable for clinical application, with such a device, it is possible to imagine that a patient with spinal cord injury could dexterously control a digital mouse and keyboard. In 2024, 1 year after FDA approval, this became a reality.
My name's Nolan Arbaugh. I'm 29 years old. About 8 years ago, I was in kind of a freak diving accident and dislocated my C4, C5, so I'm a complete quadriplegic. It's all being done with my brain. If y'all can see the cursor moving around the screen, that's all me, y'all. It's pretty cool, huh?
Actually, can you pause the song just for the audio coming through? And that was also done with your brain?
Yep.
This video is arguably the most telling glimpse into what the future might hold for BCIs. Watching it, you realize Nolan isn't just operating a computer. He's navigating the cursor as if it was his own biology, no different to an arm or a leg. In the future, the question of the boundaries of mind and body might have to change to mind-body technology, especially as the technology starts to resemble the body more and more. Right now, this loop of intention and execution only just mimics bodily control. But as these devices evolve, our traditional idea of the self as the boundary separating the mind and the body will have to expand to accommodate a new trio, mind, body, and technology. We're already seeing this in recent Neuralink exhibition, where the objective has shifted from controlling screens directly to operating limbs. The prospect of restoring mobility to someone who's lost a limb is incredible. This is where technological optimism collides with a much more complicated reality, forcing us to look at the body of criticism surrounding the privatization of our mind. In an article published in the Princeton Medical Review, researcher Perez highlights the apparent shift of Neuralink to a more private model, saying that it's interesting to note that the website is designed to present Neuralink as a commercial, personal product or device, as well as noting that Neuralink's clinical trials are now registered in the U.S. National Institutes of Health repository. When a piece of technology is designed to sit on your skull, transparency is more important than ever. In traditional science, rigid peer review is a safety net that stops catastrophic failure. When the product in question, however, is a closed-source implant, the stakes are massive. If a bionic arm or an invasive neural implant fails, the consequences can be grave. We've already seen this happen on a small scale. After Nolan's exhibit, it was reported that Nolan temporarily lost device functionality, after the microthreads of the implant shifted in his brain tissue. While the issue was resolved with a software update, the incident exposes a structural risk. This structural vulnerability leads us directly to a critical pivot point in BCI design: invasivity. Neuralink is obviously an invasive creation. It requires precise neurosurgery to attach and is not a temporary attachment. The necessity of this risk is often fiercely debated. This is because the effectiveness of a device like Neuralink goes down massively with non-invasive technology. So previously, the consensus held was that BCIs were always going to be invasive. However, a research team at MIT has challenged that belief. The alter ego was created. It's a, quote, wearable interface that allows a user to silently converse with a computing device without any voice or any discernible movements. This device definitely challenged the belief that BCIs need to be invasive. Alter Ego proves that you don't need to breach the skull to capture internal language. It intercepts neuromuscular signals along the jaw and face, translating internal verbalizations into electronic commands, just like a cortical implant, but instead from the surface of the skin. However, bypassing surgery doesn't make it a flawless alternative. The device is very visible on a person's face, lacking the seamless integration of an invasive option, as well as generally looking uncomfortable. On top of that, its capabilities seem to be much more limited than the Neuralink, only being able to replicate speech and lacking the motor and cognitive control Neuralink promises. While the Saudi also boasts a 92% accuracy, that performance can go down as low as 33% at times, showing a non-invasive BCI product likely has a long way to go before it can be a reality. Overall, the current state of BCIs seem to be experimental at best. The leading technology in 2026, Neuralink, currently only has 5 test subjects. The various issues it has, such as invasivity and scientific rigor, do not seem to be a problem other institutions are working on. So what does the future hold for these technologies? Honestly, it's not clear. Even with the huge improvement in power of BCIs by Neuralink, it's obvious that another major breakthrough would have to happen for the technology to be a mainstream commercial reality. A universe like the blockbuster movie, The Matrix, where our minds are decoupled from our physical selves, and our memories are manipulated, is just as much as a fairy tale as it ever was. BCIs really only capture electrical signals in our brains. We are still a long way from truly capturing or understanding complex human thought. But just because The Matrix is a fairy tale, doesn't mean we are stagnant. We still might be on the precipice of a profound shift. Historically, we viewed the self as an exclusive partnership between the mind and the body. But as these technologies evolve, whether they are embedded in our cortical tissue or sitting in the surface of our skin, the traditional duality might not suffice. If a machine can interpret basic thoughts or animate a prosthetic limb like your own body, the boundary could possibly dissolve, and we might have to incorporate a new trio of the mind, body, and technology. Ultimately, the day-to-day relationship between humans and machines is unlikely to undergo a radical shift anytime soon. If we want to anticipate a further future, though, where the relationship does change, we must demand more transparency, rigorous scientific review, and ethical oversight over BCIs. If the technology is destined to become an artificial element of ourself, we must ensure that we retain absolute sovereignty over it. Because if we lose command of the architecture inside our own head, we risk losing all our sovereignty. The future of BCIs shouldn't be about giving up our minds to machines, but rather ensuring our minds remain entirely our own.